I'm Anushka Srivastav from Sigma Psi. I would like to welcome our speaker, Madhur Padawala, who will be sharing his experience and will help us to understand about the ever-evolving 5G technology. Before we start with this session, I would like to inform you that at the end of the session, a feedback form will be circulated. I request you all to fill the form. Without further ado, over to Madhur.
Hello guys, is my audio okay?
Yeah, cool.
Okay, okay. So hi, I'm Madhur. About me, I'm a third year in VIT in BTech ECE. So I am quite interested in subjects in 5G and related digital communication systems. So that's exactly why I did a lot of research on this topic, and those informations are what I'm going to share with you guys in this session. So let's go to the session. At any point, if you have any doubts at all, you can either use the chat section or you can even unmute yourself to ask me the doubts. So feel free to do that. So 5G. 5G is the fifth generation mobile network. I mean, it's the global wireless standard after 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G network, right? And there's a lot of hype around this topic because of the features that the network providers are promising us. They features like really high data transfer speeds, and how they say that you can download a movie within a second. And there's also better security and better accessibility with this feature. So before we comprehend the underlying technologies of 5G, let us understand how simple cellular networks actually work. So let's take an example of a phone call. When our goal here is to transmit our voice wirelessly to another mobile. So as many of you know, this is done using EM waves, electromagnetic waves. So analog audio signals from the mic, what like right now I'm speaking, right? The analog audio signals are going through the mic, and then they're converted into digital signals, and over there, uh, converted, and then they're converted into EM waves. So that's how it travels over the air and then goes to the other receiving device. In the receiving end also, it happens in the reverse order. So first, the EM waves are converted to digital signals, and then from the digital signals to analog signals. So, but the problem with this is that the EM waves cannot travel for a long distance. I mean, they're prone to interferences, and you guys must be aware of the inverse square law that you guys must study in school. So, as the distance is increasing, like the interference is more, and the signal can't travel long distances. So, this to overcome this exact problem is why cellular technology was introduced. So cellular technology, what it does is it basically just divides the network coverage area into hexagons, and each of these hexagons have their own cellular tower. And you guys must have seen the cellular tower, right? So why do you think it's actually hexagons? Why not any other shape? You can unmute yourself too. Why do you think it's only hexagons? That's quite an odd shape, you know. Okay, that's fine. So the thing with hexagon is that when you club them together, there's no overlapping. Imagine if you overlap circles, right? There's always this intersection set over there, right? That would lead to confusion, like there would lead to interferences between two spectrums. So that's exactly why you use hexagons. And yes, you can use other shapes too, like triangles or maybe rectangles and squares and all. But the network providers actually prefer this layout. So that's why you use hexagons. And another thing is that we all think that technology is completely wireless, right? It's actually not. The towers, they actually converse with each other via optical cables, most of them. But nowadays, even they're conversing wirelessly, but still, optical cables always exist between those towers. So I'm going to try to keep the session with minimum technical terms. So I hope you guys understand all of this then. So now that we have established what cellular networks does, so let's see how it changes things now. So right now the EM waves from the mobile phone are received by the tower and they're converted into optical signals, and then they're sent to something called a switching center. So this switching center is basically like the address book for mobile connections. So it knows the cell tower area at which the receiver's device is and where it currently is. So then it can route to the nearest tower next to the second mobile phone, and then it transmits the data as EM waves, which can be interpreted by the mobile phone, same as before. Through this, we overcome the problem of the attenuation of EM waves. Now, I mean, you guys must be thinking, how do we know that which cell tower area like the particular phone is in, right? This is also taken care of the switching center only. Suppose like every time you once you get a SIM card, so it will be registered to that area switching center. Now, wherever you move from that area, the corresponding switching center will receive your data and it will update the original base switching center. So that whenever you call someone, there's always like kind of like a relay system. So one switching center to one switching center, wherever the device is, it keeps on going and then finally connects the call. So that's how it happens. Another point is that all of these cellular towers, they use a different frequency slots actually. Uh, so the thing that is just because there shouldn't be any interference, right? I mean, if all of the whole country uses the same spectrum, so there's going to be a lot of devices and there'll be a lot of interferences. You can't even connect devices together. I think we have a question in the chat box. Oh, they're not exactly controlling the signal into a hexagon, Kaushik. Basically, you're just dividing the area into a hexagon, and each hexagonal area has one cellular tower. That's it. So if you go to the next hexagon, the cellular tower will vary. That's all.
So they are bound to overlap, right?
I mean, there and the edges, obviously, there will be a bit of overlapping, but that's
Okay.
not so much as considering circles.
Okay. Get it.
So that's about how this one works. So next, we'll see how cell technology actually works. So cell technology also uses something called as a frequency slot distribution techniques. So I told you, right, each of the cellular tower uses a different frequency set. So how do you distribute it? So that's how I'm going to explain here. So in this example, suppose we have a bandwidth of 20 to 32 kilohertz. Okay, and there are three telephones sending data packets with a bandwidth of 4 kilohertz. So without shifting the frequencies, you can't overlap all the 0 to 4, 0 to 4, 0 to 4, right? If they just overlap, it's going to be a lot of interference. Obviously, you can't transfer. So that's exactly why you shift the frequencies so that they fit inside the available bandwidth that you have. So now if you look at them, after shifting, they make use of the whole 22 to 32 kilohertz bandwidth at the receiver side. So band pass filters are used to retrieve the data. I hope you guys know what band pass filters are. They're just filters where they'll take input only of the particular frequency range. So if I want only the first signal, I'll have my band pass filter only the 20 to 24 kilohertz, right? So only that signal will be received at the end. So that's how in the band pass filters are used. So this type of slot division, the frequency slot division, is known as frequency division multiple access. We say FDMA. So although this looks like a really perfect way to transmit data, it's quite inefficient. Why do you think it's inefficient? Can you guys think of anything? Why it's inefficient?
There's a lot of energy loss.
Okay, what do you mean energy loss? Actually, I mean they're all going to transmit anyway, right?
Because waves are changing their frequency a lot.
Okay, say you're almost there. The thing is, suppose the second telephone doesn't send data, what do you think happens? There's going to be a gap over there, right? There's only 20 to 24, and then what is that? 28 to 32 is going to send. So there's a gap in between. That gap is wasted space. That's wasted spectrum. You're not using it for anything at all. Your bandpass filter won't receive any signal from that particular frequency spectrum. So that's quite inefficient. So in every cycle, there's this frequency range is wasted. So that's not what we want. So that's why we're going to use for better methods for this. This happened only in the initial stages. Now we use much better networks. So let's see. First 1G, you guys. Sorry. So next we'll have 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. Right. Let's see how that goes on. First 1G. It was the first commercial mobile network ever. I mean, it was introduced in the 1980s. So this is where it started. The FDMA that I told you, they used FDMA over here because it was just a very basic one for something to start with, right? So this one, 1G, it actually used analog signals, which were very much prone to interferences, and as a consequence, audio quality was really poor. But it was good for its time. So data rate had a maximum of 14.4 kbps. Can you imagine 14.4 kbps, right? So, but it actually improved in the subsequent years. These data rates couldn't accommodate all the features. Like there were literally no security features in this network. If you could just intercept the frequency range, you can hear the conversations. That's how it was. So it also consumed a lot of power, which was the major reasons why the phones were really huge back then. I remember how those heavy phones are there almost weighed a kilogram. So that's a lot to hold, right? So due to all this disadvantage, only we introduced 2G. So I think we have a question. Right? Oh yeah, Matthews. Yeah, correct. Okay. So 2G was the first mobile network to use digital signals. So digital signals had a better signal to noise ratio than analog. So they came with a higher data transfer rate than before, and since they were digital signals, it was also possible to encrypt them, provide a security feature. Digital is just binary, right? It's 1 and 0. You can just encrypt those digits and then decrypt at the receiver side. So that gives a good security feature. And they didn't even use high power because it's not analog. Digital devices don't use as high power as analog, and they didn't also have to be so big because there's no high power consumption. The batteries were really smaller now, and normal size mobile phones started coming out. So this was also the first time SMS and internet features were introduced in mobile phones. Like unlike in 1G, 2G used something called TDMA and CDMA. So it stands for time division multiple access and code division multiple access. So let's see how these two techniques differ from the initial FTMA. So time division multiple access. Cellular technology also, sorry. An example. Okay. So in time division, what happens is that there's a mux. It's a multiplexer. So basically, multiplexer is something that it has a lot of input lines, but there's only one output line, and there's some separate line called a select line. So using the select line, the multiplexer will choose which of the input line should it transmit to it, right? So suppose if my select line says 1, the A signal will only get transmitted to the output, and if a select line says 2, only that signal will get transmitted to output. So at the time, only one of it is transmitted. So over here, if you think, let's say three signals are being passed, and then you divide the three signals into like three parts in time duration, so the T, T, and T. So what happens is initially in frame one, you can see first bit only A is sent, the first part. Just the A is half, 1/3 of the A signal is sent. That is using the mux. Select line is 1. Then when the select line is 2, only 1/3 of the second signal is sent, and then the same way 1/3 of the third signal is sent. So each frame has 1/3 of all of those three, right? So that's how data is sent over here. That's almost similar to frequency FTMA, but it's just that there's no shifting of any data over here. So there are two types of TDMA techniques actually. So one of it is synchronous TDM, which is very much similar to FTMA, what we just read now. This also has the inefficiency over here, where suppose one of the line doesn't have any data to send at all, that box will be empty. That slot will be empty. You can see over here too. So that is exactly why they brought in statistical TDM. So in statistical TDM, it calculates that if there is a vacancy over here, why not just use the fourth line and just get that data pushed inside, right? Why waste space at all? So statistical TDM does that. So this solves inefficiency, right? And only whenever there's no any data to send in any of the lines. Right? Another one that I mentioned was code division multiple access. Now this one is entirely different from time division multiple access or FTMA at all. So see the CDMA, after the data is being digitized, expands out the data towards a whole compatible bandwidth. It just sends the signal throughout the bandwidth. It doesn't use the 24 to 32 and stuff. It just uses, if there's 22, 32 kilohertz, then it uses all of that bandwidth. So how does it not get mixed? So that's exactly what happen. They do is that they encode they use special codes to encode the signal while sending. So they send it bit by bit, just in packets. And over the receiver end, whichever there's a the special code that I use that will be in the reverse order. It's something like a inverse function, and then they can decode the data from there. I mean, I know it's a bit complex to understand from here, just with the technical terms, but I'll show you an image which will make it quite clear. So over here you can see in the first image, imagine something like imagine there are a group of people talking in a room, and then if the people talk in different frequencies, right? That is FTMA. They all are talking in different frequencies. Now, when you comes to TDMA, they all take turns and talk with each other. Okay, and when it comes to CDMA, they all are talking in different languages. Only the ones who talk the same language, they can understand each other. So I hope this made it clear. You guys have any questions regarding this? Okay. So after 2G, we have 3G. No, 3G was next upgrade after 2G, right? And 2G was really good for calls and manageable for browsing the internet, just the emails part maybe. But 3G upgrades the data transfer aspect of 2G. I mean, as the bandwidth use is much wider than before, and more devices were able to accommodate it in this bandwidth. 3G made internet browsing much better. This is the first time you could actually stream a HD video on your mobile. Although it had a lot of advantages, the range of the signals was much lesser compared to 2G. This is just applies just like the inverse square law. So this is obvious because of the frequency of the wave, right? That's how the inverse square of the law works, right? So setup of the 3G towers was costly. You had to set up a lot of towers within closer ranges so that it could accommodate, give a wide network coverage area. So next came 4G. This is what we're using right now. So it used newer signal propagation techniques. To be specific, it's called multiple input, multiple output. So I would say I address it as MIMO. And it also uses something called orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. That's OFDM. Now 4G further improved the data transfer rate. I mean, it was now possible to even watch live TV on your mobile phones. So that's a huge step, right? And it's also a huge step not only just for the mobiles, it's a huge step for IoT too, Internet of Things. And this network also supported backward compatibility like 3G. So moreover, this was all possible just because they broadened the frequency spectrum, 2 to 8 gigahertz. That's a really wide frequency spectrum. Exactly why what enables all the features we have right now in a mobile. So let's talk about multiple input, multiple output, right? So until 3G, the signals were propagated in a way such that they always took the shortest path. I mean that sounded logical, right? That sounds logical. If it always the signal takes the shortest path, it will receive your device in the fastest time. So that sounds good. But the limitation is that you can't send multiple signals in the shortest path simultaneously. There will be interference. So this is exactly why we use MIMO and OFDM. So, so describe MIMO in layman's terms. It's simply transmission of multiple signals uh, from each transmitter and also receiving multiple signals at the receiver. They're all sent together. This means that one antenna can provide a device with a sturdier connection. And suppose if it fails, suppose the connection fails, the other some more antennas can actually provide connection to this. They can just add on to it and give us in much stabler connection. So traditionally, engineers treated natural this multi-path propagation as an impairment, but MIMO was the first radio technology that treats it as an advantage. Uh, they increased the capacity of the radio link by transmitting multiple signals over multiple co-located antennas. So this is accomplished without the need of any additional power or any additional bandwidth. So what happens is that these signals are, I told you that they're all sent together, but they don't worry about the interference that they can cause between themselves. So this is because those signals are totally uncorrelated. They're not related at all. Even they're like mixing apples and oranges. Mixing them not going to change anything. Okay, unlike before. So even then the another thing is that they don't really prefer line of sight communication. Suppose I have two devices and they're not in line of sight. It's not like the connection won't happen at all. They will use multiple paths. They even for the same distance they're going to use multiple paths such that so that they can accommodate more devices. Right. So that gives a really good advantage over here. So OFDM. Before I explain this concept, what do you think orthogonal signals are? You guys have any idea what orthogonal signals are? Or orthogonality or anything at all? You can unmute yourself or use the chat box. Okay, orthogonality is 90 degrees sounds right. But in terms of so as I just said in the previous slide, what they mean is that they are totally uncorrelated signals. That means they're not related to each other at all. So even when you mix them together, there's not going to be any problem. You can retrieve them in the receiver end without any problem. Like, you can just retrieve them as two separate signals. That's all. So OFDM is kind of a bit of a complex mathematical concept, which involves. Sorry, I'm not able to hear you. Too. Okay, we have a question for international signals. Okay, so I told you guys about this switching centers, right? So these switching centers are not just for each country; they are connected all over the world. So that's how they connect signals. They just have the data of where at each time where all the cellular devices are. So when you contact, if you're trying to contact another international device, then it will just pass the signal through switching center to switching center, and then it will just go there finally. OFDM is kind of a complex concept, so it uses something called fast Fourier transforms. So in simple words, it divides high data stream into numerous low data streams, and that is considering the time domain. And this works more or less in the same way as TDMA, and all the signals produced after undergoing the OFDM process are orthogonal. They're uncorrelated, so they don't interfere with each other at all. So this is exactly why MIMO is possible. And OFDM also occurs in the can understand it in the frequency domain, which is what I'll be explaining. Might be a bit easy. Okay. So we already seen how frequency division works, right? We split the bandwidth into sets of frequency ranges and then send signals. Now in the first graph you can see it's actually showing FDM, frequency division multiplexing. So in different ranges of frequency, the signals are sent. You can see channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, right? So you can notice that there is a sort of a gap between those channels. There's a small gap. So these gap frequency ranges are called band gaps. Those are placed over there. They ensure that they have band gaps because in order to reduce prevent interference between two channels, right? But this no, if we add up all these band gap frequency range, you're going to waste a lot of spectrum, right? That's unused spectrum, right? So in order to reduce this, in order to come over, overcome this is why we use OFDM. In OFDM, what you do is you just consider that you're compressing all of those, just pushing them together such that whenever a single channel is going to peak, the sine wave is, I just, one sec. Sorry, is somebody saying anything? Okay. So suppose in channel 2, my signal is peaking, but at that instant, my adjacent channels are channel 1 and channel 3, right? Those channels are at the very bottom, like the very lowest amplitude that they can have, the lowest amplitude at 0. So this means that there's no interference. When one of my channels is peaking, there's no problem for me. So in that way, we're going to save a lot of bandwidth, right? So that's what we're using right now in 4G. You guys understood that? Okay, I'm going to assume you understood that. So 4G is great. I mean, it had high data speeds and almost all the features you could think of, right? You can watch live TV, you can watch your HD YouTube videos and whatnot. So why do you think 5G has been introduced? I mean, doesn't 4G suffice all our needs? What do you guys think? Why is there a need for 5G at all?
For
Okay.
service. For
Voice is-
service.
Okay, yes. What else? Data, yes, that is absolutely right. More possible with 5G. So you get speeds of almost 100 MB per second for as an average speed. The download speed would be get. Yes, gigabit, that's the theoretical speed, but practically you won't be getting as much. Okay, so let's say that, like the frequency spectrum used so far, getting more crowded and crowded with devices, especially in the age of Internet of Things, where billions of devices are constantly connected. Your cars are connected, your mobile phones are connected, and there isn't just enough bandwidth in the short bandwidth range, there isn't just enough space for all the devices to be connected simultaneously. And we also know that the 6 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz bandwidth is empty. So why not just use it? So it will reduce the data traffic by a lot, and the devices need not take turns in transferring data, right? So there's going to be a lot of space over there. So as you can see in the image, everything above 6 gigahertz, it's not exactly fully empty. It's just that not commercially used before until 5G, until 4G. So 5G makes use of this empty frequency spectrum. So 6 to 300 gigahertz is much wider spectrum that paves way for even higher data transfer rates, as one of you mentioned. So for an average, it has like 100 Mbps maximum, 100 Mbps download speed in a practical point of view. But it is possible that it could also go to 20 GB per second. So those are really extremely high speeds, right? So with these kind of data transfer rates, and a lot of industries are going to be benefited. So you guys heard about something called remote surgery? Where maybe you have come across it on YouTube or Instagram or something. Doctors are going to perform surgery remotely, right? So they're going to be smarter IoT devices. There's going to be better security in this, and there's also there's some other features too. But before we go to that, let's see how 5G actually works. So there are 5 important technologies over here. There's millimeter waves, there's small cells, there's massive MIMO, there's beamforming, and full duplex communication. Okay. So before I go into, let's see if I have any questions. Okay. So the first one, millimeter wave. As I mentioned before, 5G uses higher frequency spectrum. So the signals produced in this range are called millimeter wave, right? So when you calculate the millimeter waves, the 6 gigahertz or 300 gigahertz, it will be in millimeters, the wavelength. That's why it's called millimeter waves. So according to inverse square law, it's obvious that it's going to be a lot of signal loss. I think we have a couple of questions here. Oh yeah, satellite communication, yes, it does, but it's not commercially used as much as the cellular networks that we do now. So satellite networks are used for communication, but it's not as obvious. Like in our phones, we don't use satellite communication, right? I mean, we do use the GPS, but that's a totally different thing. I hope that cleared it out. Cool. So the next thing, millimeters they're not strong enough to travel long distances or not penetrate through walls. So these signals are sometimes absorbed by the atmospheric gases, making it really unreliable for long distance communication. And their range is also quite poor compared to 3G and 4G. The 4G towers had a range of about 15 kilometers, I guess, but 5G towers have a really low range of 500 meters. In the ideal case, it's going to be 1 kilometer, that's all. So you can understand how this is a major problem when combined with attenuation too. So the solution to this is small cell networks. So 4G used really high power cell towers to transmit signals, but if we use the same technique for 5G, it won't work because of the problems that I just mentioned before. So if you look at the image, you can see that the signal is getting intercepted by the trees. Right? It doesn't pass through that, and the mobiles are not getting connected. To overcome this, we introduce some smaller cellular towers. They call them as small cells. They're really small cellular towers, and they're placed in very close proximity. So they're placed in a range of 500 meters or maybe at most at a 1 kilometer range, so that they can form sort of a relay connection. So suppose in the second image you can see the topmost, top left is a mobile phone, right? How is that getting signals? So it is first sending it to the closest small cell, and then it's going around the tree. So there's no interference over there. So this sort of connection is going to be, very useful in cities. The buildings themselves act as obstacles for the millimeter waves. Right? And next we have massive MIMO. Just like in 4G, 5G makes use of MIMO too, right? What is this thing? The thing is that it's improved upon it. So it's in a much larger scale. Hundreds of ports are available on each tower to transmit signals simultaneously. So, but there is the problem of interference over there here, right? Like I told, when you just send signals simultaneously in the same direction together, that's obviously there's a problem that will be interference. No matter how much OFDM is used and stuff, it's still going to be interference. That's inevitable. So this is where beamforming comes in. So beamforming is like a traffic signal system for the cellular signals. Like instead of broadcasting the signal in all directions, why not just route it towards just the specific direction the mobile phone is in right now? This is sort of like the TV dish we have, no dish TV and all. So they are all directed towards you. They're not broadcasted. So there's a difference that reduces interference. So basically, these base stations that we use, they can create directed beams of signal, boosting the strength whenever it's needed and canceling out the signal when it's not. So they focus signals in the direction of the device. So its precision is what makes it more efficient and also causes less interference. So the thing with this one is that the targeted beam transmission, it need not always take the shortest path available. As I mentioned before, for MIMO to work, to accommodate multiple devices, it's not it's not practical to use just the shortest path. You can even use the long a bit deviate from the shortest path, use multiple bounces, multiple relays and all. But the thing is, you may feel a slight latency over there, but it's not something that's noticeable. So that's exactly why we're still using this. There's not much of a difference. So if you can accommodate more devices and still get these almost same performance, why not just use it, right? Sorry. So all this is handled by signal processing algorithms, which is way out of our scope right now, this session. Yes. So finally, full duplex communication. So what do you guys think full duplex communication is? Have you heard about this before? Okay, I think we have a couple of questions here. Okay, Venkata, you have a question. Okay, now we're communicating from country to country. It also be possible to communicate from planet to planet. Yes, planet to planet is possible, and that's what. How do you think the space station communicates with the Earth? It happens. It is there, but they use a different frequency. And these methods that we use right now, they're not applicable to them. They're just too inferior for that. Okay. So full duplex, it's basically it's all about increasing efficiency and speed. Now picture a walkie-talkie. We used it way before, right? And some of them still use it right now too. So only one person could speak at a time, right? So this is called half duplex communication. Either you can send data or receive data. You can't do them simultaneously. Only one signal is sent across the channel. So now think in terms of data. 4G, while allowing you to send and receive data at the same time, it actually uses two different channels. So suppose if I assign 20 to 32 kilohertz as the sending data sending channel, and then the data receiving channel will be somewhere around 40 to 50 kilohertz. So we're using two channels and then receiving data simultaneously. But that is obviously going to be inefficient. What if there is if there's a way that you can use the same channel for both sending and receiving data simultaneously? That's going to save up a lot of bandwidth, right? So that's exactly what full duplex communication is. Input and output at the same time, sending and receiving. So 5G will allow us to use both sending and receiving data to occur the same channel. So this doubles the capacity of the channel that results in massive efficiency gains. That's quite obvious, right? So for this one, let's assume that the trains or the data transmitted between two devices in a 1 gigahertz frequency channel. Okay. Now 5G uses something. There are this really high speed switches made using the silicon. They're silicon transistors to momentarily route the two waves so that they can travel past each other. So sort of like a short circuit kind of stuff. So it just goes over it for a moment. So the data sent and received can go over each other, and then they can just go in their own ways. Then it seem like a single channel full duplex. So that's how it does. Done. So this way, it's going to be used very efficiently, the spectrum. Now, I think we have some more questions here. Before I go to the applications, let's see. Okay, moon comes in interception. Yes, you have to. But obviously, there's going to be have a lot. They're going to have a lot of calculations done. Shika says they can. It's not that I told it's they're actually reflectors kind of stuff where this bounce of the signal in the space too, so that even if there are obstacles, like asteroids or maybe even space junk, All those are obstacles only. So they can just go around them. That happens. But it's not exactly how I'm. No, they don't work exactly how I'm explaining it. Okay. So applications 5G in healthcare. You guys have any idea about how 5G is going to be used in healthcare? You guys can unmute yourself too. And nobody has thought about it yet. So that's understandable.
Yeah,
India. Sorry.
Yeah, the extras you use, right?
Yeah.
Do they come under this? No, right? I don't think so. It's different part, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of different. It's okay.
Mhm.
Cool. Anyways, so you guys know Ericsson, right? It's a Swedish company. It's a telecommunication company. So they have been actually collaborating with King's College London. So to see how 5G can actually be applied to surgical procedures, and they have produced impressive results. To operate safely, a surgeon needs to be able to react to physical and visual stimuli in under 10 milliseconds. That's the latency that you need for making a surgery. It's a minimum compatibility you're going to look for. So right now with our 4G connections, our latency is it's way too high. You can't do that right now. And even if you use high broadband speeds, like in games and stuff, you still get a latency of like 20 milliseconds at least. So 5G will make it possible to to get the latency under 10 milliseconds. So the time traditionally required to compress and decompress the video content and the feedback over the cloud streaming vastly this all exceeds the 10 milliseconds. So that's exactly why right now we are not able to accommodate remote surgery. But through 5G, surgeons can actually use they can get haptic feedback from the patient right now. So that's what Ericsson is working on. So when you're operating on someone, you can actually feel like you're actually doing it in person, and they have special gloves to accommodate this one. So that's how fast 5G data transfer rate is and how useful it's going to be in the health industry. And this is not just limited to remote surgery. It's also possible to integrate it with medical sensors. So let's say there's a large number of medical sensor terminals and related video devices or maybe wearable biomedical devices. They all can communicate in real time uh, and capture and transfer the patient's health information to the appropriate doctor or maybe a hospital. And they also do this continuously. They're not going to take breaks. They don't worry about low latency or something like that. So imagine there are sensors such as what is it? There's a pacemaker installed, or maybe there's a heart rate measuring sensor, or a blood pressure sensor, blood glucose sensor. All these sensors can be integrated together. So all of these they can use they can be so part of a IoT structure, IoT architecture, and then they can send data to the respective hospital or whoever's responsible for it. So all of these they make use of the cloud and AI analysis of the patient health related data is done. So they can record the patient data, can keep it forever, can store all that, right? Can analyze it too. So that's about in healthcare. There are a lot of questions coming up. Okay. Yes, Prashant, a lot of robots are used. Exactly, yes. Book appointments quicker. Well, yeah, if you can, that is possible, but that totally depends on the database where you're using and what kind of cloud architecture you're using. That depends.
Also, will it be accurate? Because performing it remotely. What if the signals are like not proper and some interception happens and suppose it gets interrupted? The patient is in risk, I guess.
So when I say 5G, I'm when using 5G, what I'm saying is that they're not exactly transmitting. Suppose the hospital is right next to you, like hospital is in Chennai, and then there's a 5G cell tower over there, and the operation that's taking place it's in Delhi. But it's not like the signals are going to transfer from this cell tower to that cell tower directly. There's also 5G
Okay.
Wi-Fi available. So the thing is, right now what our broadband connection what we get is it's all like just wires, right? We get it from the center and it is connected to the router. But in case of 5G broadband, what happens is there you install your own small cell tower on your roof, and then you get the 5G signal. With that, you get really high speeds of data. So it's quite different over here. But obviously, there is
No, but we have robots, coming up, right? I mean, AI is building up so quick. I mean,
Right.
you don't need remotely. I mean, you just program it once, it
Yeah,
analyzes
how
everything, and it
much
does
are you
all,
going to
all
trust
bits.
a robot, right? You think you can trust a robot to operate on someone as of now? But that's
Yeah,
also okay.
humans make mistakes, but systems don't, right? When you program something,
But right now,
it goes according to the program.
we just focus on how at least we are
Yeah,
accommodating the communication aspect. So later, AI comes later on.
okay.
So 5G in manufacturing. What about this? What do you think manufacturing industry will benefit from 5G?
These companies, which work on cloud platforms, I
Okay.
guess they have a better, performing.
Yes.
What do you say?
Yes, that's great.
The workers, they have good performing rate
Mhm.
because it'll be quick and the connection will be proper, so the work gets,
So the faster your
delivered
connection,
quickly.
the easier
Yeah,
for
the
you,
faster
right?
the work gets
Exactly.
over. Yeah,
So
right.
especially what happens is that automation in factories where there's a lot of machines and stuff. If right now they're all automated, but the thing is they also need to talk to each other. They need to connect to each other. They need to have sort of a communication channel. So for this, you can use something called a private 5G network. You're not going to subscribe to the 5G networks that will be offered from the like the telecom industry. It's something it's a private 5G network just for the factory. So that all the information that is passed between the equipment between equipment and even maybe computers over there, they'll all be really fast. So they'll be really highly reliable over here. And also manufacturers, they employ variety of robots for industrial tasks. These robots that can move products from one location to another, and maybe they're robots designed to work alongside humans, in a warehouse maybe. And all these are currently actually connected with wires. So obviously they're connected wirelessly to some of them, but it's just not so reliable right now. But with 5G, it's going to change. So do you guys think of an example where robots can be used by any company specifically for delivery?
Uber,
Yes, delivery.
Amazon.
Yes, exactly. One of you was mentioned, Rahul has mentioned drone deliveries. You guys must have seen that Amazon's video, right? Yes, exactly. Like Amazon is trying.
Yeah.
That is definitely going to be possible with 5G. There's no doubt at all. So
There are also Tesla cars, right, which go on the roads. They also follow
yes,
5G. They get the
Tesla
map.
also will make
Yeah,
a benefit of that. And you also mentioned AI, right? Tesla is one of the both of them.
yeah, true.
Exactly. And in the future, actually, initially we started with the LiDARs actually for automated cars and all, right? So now they're thinking that you don't even need LiDARs. You can just because the communication is so fast, you can just use AI and 5G network and communicate. That's it. So that would reduce the
Oh,
cost of the manufacturing too.
yeah. Here in
So
Dubai, they're just creating a new, taxi kind of thing, air taxi kind of thing, which
yes,
makes it things even quicker. That completely works on 5G.
yes,
They're
exactly.
building it still.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
saw that too.
yeah. It's only in Dubai, I guess. First place to start.
It's gonna
Yeah,
take all of these. Every 5G technology is gonna take a long time to get it in India.
yeah,
We're still,
true.
enjoying 4G. We just got introduced to 4G. There are actually areas where there's no 4G signal available too. So, so
Mm.
another coming to this manufacturing industry, in the smart factories, there's this small system where you can monitor how your equipment is working. So suppose if I want to know beforehand that my equipment is going to fail, it's going to, get what to say, maybe the bearings are gone, they're not working properly, the efficiency is reducing. So all this I can calculate in real time and then communicate with the respective authority. So I actually need not be in a factory at all. I can just install all my sensors and connect them to my network, maybe a cloud server through 5G, and then I can just stay at home and monitor the whole factory. Those are the applications that we're going to look for with 5G, right? And also, as I mentioned before, drones, they're definitely going to come in. I'm pretty sure about that.
Yeah.
So next one, we have 5G in VR and AR and VR, right? So you guys know what AR VR is?
Yeah, yeah. Augmented reality and virtual reality.
Yes, yes. Shikhar, I'll get back to the starting question later. Okay, I actually have a lot to talk about that too.
Okay.
So, in guys, do you know something called as mixed reality too? Actually, didn't add it in my slides. But do you guys know what mixed reality is? MR. They call it as MR. You heard of it?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I'm not sure actually.
Okay. Sorry. So mixed reality is basically a combination of VR and AR. So and what VR does is it's completely virtual, right? You're going into a totally new virtual world. What AR does, it's bringing in a virtual world to your real world. So the mixed reality, it's something that combines both of these. Uh, so you're bringing virtual elements, and then it's also aligns with the physical dimensions that you see in your real world. So it's basically a combination of those. So that domain, it's going to be going to be benefited a lot by 5G. So all of this is because of something called edge computing. So traditionally, what we did was, if you're analyzing any data or sending data, receiving data, all the calculation and analysis are done in the cloud server, at the cloud side. They're not done at the user side. At least they're farther from the user side. So right now, with 5G, what we're saying is that we can actually have small nodes, or you can edge computation means that you're computing to like closer to your device itself. Maybe there's a small node that you're connected, all your devices are connected to, and over there itself you calculate all the analysis stuff and everything is done, and then only the final required data is sent to the cloud. So all of this saves a lot of power too and a lot of computing time. So with 5G, you're gonna have ultra low latency, and because of this, AR and VR is going to be really good. You guys must be knowing, right? AR and VR games are available, right? So all of this is going to be much
Yeah,
better.
security.
Imagine
What
if
does
it's
high
a
security mean?
sorry.
High security, right? What do you mean by high security and VR and AR part?
No, I'm just saying that 5G is going to not okay. Ignore it in terms of games, but when you use 5G signals,
Yeah,
5G network to connect various devices for using VR and AR, the data can secure. There are new methods coming up. So initially, it was not possible because there's a limitation. You can only send what to say. As I mentioned before, you can send only as shortest path was taken. So in that
yeah.
case, the security will only be for that particular path. Now in the same path, there are multiple there's reflections and there's a lot more involved in this 5G network. So newer security methods are evolved. It's not something related to compatibility with 5G. It's just that they introduce security with 5G.
Okay.
I hope I
Yeah,
didn't
thank you.
confuse you. Yeah.
No, I got it. I got it. Thank you.
Okay. So imagine you're a mechanical engineer. You're designing a product. You're designing a car maybe. So with 5G, what you can do is okay, actually even a simpler example would be all of you must be knowing Tony Stark, right? You know how he uses the 3D visual, the holograms and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So all of that can actually be possible with 5G, and you can work in real time. You wear your VR glasses, or something like the Google glasses that I mentioned. There's an image in the bottom, right? So if you use that, you can actually work in real time with the designs. You can augment it in real time. You can expand it. You can change everything. So that's how fast it's going to be. So maybe you can collaborate with other countries, people working in other countries too. So that's how it's going to be improved. So 5G myths. So have you guys heard about any 5G myths? Everybody
Its
knows.
radiation kills us.
Yes. What else? Just a second, guys. We just take a water break. Sorry. Yep. Okay. What else? You must be knowing a lot, right? There's a lot of controversies regarding 5G. But yeah, the most important one was radiation is going to kill. Right? Okay. So let's see. First thing, 5G is dangerous. Oh yeah, birds getting killed too. Yes. Yes, that happened. That is true. So 5G is dangerous. And there is actually no definite answer to this. The research is still being done for the effects of 5G. So the WHO, they actually declare that as of now there are no life-threatening effects in 5G. There's nothing discovered so far. But meanwhile, this debate is going to be go on forever. And meanwhile, 5G is going to be implemented commercially by the network providers. So obviously, you might be like you say that there's radiation coming out of it, right? But even the current cellular towers that we're using for 4G, even they have radiation emitting. They also emit radiation. So there's a certain threshold that they need to check. So every tower they'll check the certain threshold. If it's over that, they're obviously going to remove it. At least that's what the rules say. So there is a certain threshold that is acceptable. But even then, we can't really say about the long-term effects of this. That's just not possible right now. So next one, 5G is only going to impact the telecom industry. As we've already seen, this is simply not the whole story. Of course, it will be revolutionary for telecom, but not only that industry, right? Like I just explained about the VR industry. There's healthcare. There's manufacturing industry too. Even in entertainment, right? And for farming also, you can use this. So in case of farming, you can have the different farming apparatus can communicate with each other really fast with low latency. So this will allow one operator to remotely operate various things like something maybe like tractors and combine harvesters and much more. Next we have 5G will replace 4G completely. So that's another myth about 5G. It's say people think that whenever 5G comes, 4G is going to die. Nobody's going to use 4G anymore. But can the dominance of a new wireless network is more of an evolution. It doesn't happen overnight. Basically, no wireless as network has wholly overtaken its predecessor. So right now there's still 4G connection, there's still 2G connections, and even if 5G comes, the 4G is not going to die. So the most obvious reason you can see is that not everybody is going to have a 5G compatible device, right? Not everybody is going to upgrade right away. So it takes time. So the network providers still have to accommodate the 3G and 4G users too. So that's the thing. So this is the this might sound extreme. 5G spreads COVID, but it's still there are people who still believe that. But it's a specific myth gained noticeable traction in the early days of the pandemic, probably in 2020. So, however, this could perhaps it was maybe because of the pandemic panic and not so much about 5G. We just wanted to blame something, right? So, despite the ongoing debate regarding the safety of the electromagnetic radiation I told you before, the one thing is for sure: COVID doesn't. 5G is not spread by COVID. Sorry, COVID is not spread by 5G. Okay, so 5G in India. Bringing a 5G network in India is an ultimate challenge for network providers. So countries like China and USA had already started the testing process of 5G when we were just happy that we got 4G networks. So that's how slow it is over here. So we can imagine how long it's going to take for a 5G network to come in India. When recently they just had a test, Airtel actually tested 5G in a few states, just for a few weeks or something. But it's still an undergoing process. Not going to be here anytime soon. And even in some cities, 4G LTE is slow. So right now it's still slow. So they need to improve that too. So in case of in some parts of India, since 4G is not available, there's also people still using 3G. So that's also possible, right? So we should consider all of this and not expect 5G anytime soon. And there are actually some places in the United States they actually advertised that they're giving 5G. They changed. What they did was they just changed the network name from 4G to 5G. That's it. They just changed the name, and people were people believed that it was through 5G, and they started calling registering for it and all. That's also possible. So, guys have any questions? Oh, you posted any mail? Yes. What is specific to Vodafone building 5G cell sites? Everybody has permission to build 5G. This thing. Okay. So, what do you think is going to be next in 5G? Is there any other thing we can introduce in 5G? Combine 5G with?
I have a question. I mean, in India, is 5G still working good? I mean, is the network? How's the network status in India?
Oh, they haven't introduced it commercially. They're just about to start. Right now, just Jio and Airtel just publicly told that they're going to start it soon. But the trials are still going on. Recently, I just read about how Airtel had a trial in Hyderabad, I guess. Yeah, they had a trial in Hyderabad.
Because in India, the population is huge, massive, and
it's not just about the population. It's also the infrastructure is totally different, right? So when I told you that they came from 3G to 4G, they had to install new cellular towers to accommodate for the right. So for 5G, it is even worse. You got to install a small cell in almost in every kilometer range, right? So that's going to take time. And the speed varies so much that suppose if I'm in direct line of sight with the small cell, I'm going to get a really high GB per second speed. But just for moving across the street, it will reduce drastically. I'm probably going to get only 200 MB per second, something like that. So that's how.
So that's why right now people prefer 4G, right, in India?
Exactly, 4G is more
I
stable
think.
right now. 4G is stable. You can handle it. It's fine for now. So it's going to be a slow change.
Compatible also.
Yeah, that's what. Even just right now, mobiles have started coming with 5G compatibility.
True.
And also, you should also consider the battery life of the mobile phones. So what happens if there are not enough cellular towers? Your phone will start searching in all directions for the signal. So that's going to take. It's at the expense of your battery, right? So if there's 5G cellular towers, then obviously it's going to take a lot of battery life. That's it.
Yeah, battery life will be bad.
Exactly. So that's not a good thing. So next in 5G. So far what we discussed in 5G, actually there's the two tiers. There's one macro cell tier and one device tier. What I've talked about all this while, it's the macro cell tier. It's the really it's almost the same as the normal cellular networks that we're talking about. But there's something else called device tier. In device tier, this is called device to device communication. That's a concept that we are going to use over here. So what does it strike? What do you think device to device communication is?
Each
Like a
device
Bluetooth
will
thing?
become a tower itself.
Sorry?
Each device will become a network tower itself. So
Yeah, it's
communication
sort of
will
like
happen.
sort of like a mobile hotspot, right?
Yeah.
So
Something like Bluetooth, I guess.
exactly.
Is it?
So that's what Bluetooth is also a type of a D2D. Okay. So
Okay.
D2D is basically communication between two devices without the participation of the cellular tower. I'm just going to call it base station. Okay. So imagine I'm going to call a person who's right next to me. So in that case also, my phone is going to send the signal all the way to the cellular tower base station, and then it's going to come back to the receiver cell. Right? That's quite inefficient. Why can't I just if the device is in proximity and communicate with it, why can't I just directly communicate with it? So it's sort of like Bluetooth, right? So that's exactly what D2D is. So it's all when it's combined with 5G, it's gonna be really good because at a close proximity there's no interference, and when you use 5G networks, you're gonna get really high data speed, right? And another thing you can do over here is that you can use them as relays. You guys know what a relay is? Maybe in terms of mobile phones. Suppose let's say I'm in a really remote area, and then I'm not getting any signal from the base station, but I need to communicate with the base station. So, but there are different mobiles in short distance times, like maybe 500 meters next to you there's a mobile, and it goes on like that. So you can just communicate with that device, and then it goes on like a relay until there's a mobile phone that has good connection with the base station. So like that, you can just transfer the data. So that's how you can use D2D communication. So there's this standard for communication networks called 3GPP. It's sort of maybe like an IEEE equivalent. It's IEEE standard equivalent. So they have considered D2D. They currently in the 12th edition of the standard, they have considered D2D as a proximity services. It's an official one. So this is sort of an ongoing research topic. So as I said, why we need this? So because we are only going to
Excuse
communicate.
me.
Yes.
Yeah, so but like as you told, this relay system is used if I cannot directly communicate with a base station. So
Yeah.
why is that like when we go to hilly areas and like places like that, so we are not able to like make calls or get good connectivity if
This
this
is
feature is
something.
available?
Yeah, this is something that's not yet executed right now. It's not working right now. It's a research topic right now.
Oh, acha. And like one more thing, like suppose a 5G is introduced, but I still have a 4G SIM, and I
Yes.
call you. You have a 4G SIM, I have a 5G SIM. So how we will be
Yeah,
able to?
there's gonna be backward compatibility. It's not that if you get a 5G SIM, it just supports 5G. It doesn't mean it's not gonna support all the older versions.
Yeah, but like it will first communicate with the 5G tower, and like it will send like frequency of its technology related to its technology. So how will it like won't it take longer to communicate with a 4G device?
No, the thing is there's the switching centers, right? Get the switching centers. So the thing is, okay, you're saying that a 4G device, I'm going to call a person who's using 5G network. Okay. So when I'm going to send signal from my 4G device, it's obviously going to go to the 4G tower. From there, it's going to the switching center. It doesn't know where that other 5G device is, right? The switching center has info which tower it has to route to, right? So suppose it will know that this device is connected to a 5G tower. It's using 5G network. So it will route it to that tower only. It doesn't mean that it's going to send directly, right? I hope you got that.
Yeah.
So because we're using about D2D, we're using D2D. So because it's close range proximity communication, energy is going to be there's going to be a lot of energy efficiency and high throughput. High throughput is just more data is sent, in a stable way, something like that. And the latency is there's going to be really low latency, and you're gonna reduce a lot of traffic from the original cellular networks. Okay, so that is gonna make pave way for more devices to simultaneously use it over there too. There's another question. Good. So in D2D, there are two types. There's in-band and out-band. So in in-band, basically you can see that the D2D devices and the cellular devices are they simultaneously use the same cellular spectrum. So suppose you're going to use the 5G spectrum, the 6 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz. They're going to both of the D2D devices and cellular devices are going to use it simultaneously. So obviously, one common thing that you can imagine is that there's going to be a lot of interference, right? So, so in order to share these spectrums, what they do is that there are techniques that are called as resource allocation techniques. So in underlay, D2D device must share the spectrum with one specific, maybe one or two cellular devices, and based on the interference, that base station will decide which appropriate cellular device you should connect the D2D devices to. So there's some method called as the most common method. The first thing you can think of is distance based. So suppose my D2D device pair wants to connect to some other, cellular network. Whichever cellular unit is closer to me, it will connect to that. So that is based on distance. Another even complex one is that these D2D pairs will actually go into bidding, sort of a bidding, correct? And their currency would be how the currency would be their throughput and their outage probability. Outage probability is basically the probability with which the connection will fail. So if the probability is less, so they have a they have an upper hand in that bidding. So they would bid for which cellular device they can connect to. Okay. So over here, there's an interference is how they manage in underlay. In overlay, they also use the whole of the cellular spectrum, but the thing is they divide the spectrum into parts. They say like 1 to 2 kilohertz is for D2D devices and 2 to 4 is just for cellular devices. So in this case, you can understand that there's not going to be any interference, right? But the problem with this is that when you're going to split it up like that, the cellular spectrum, then obviously the cellular device is going to have a lower bandwidth, and then when the bandwidth is lower, you can't use cellular devices simultaneously. So that's a disadvantage. So most of the D2D communication is considered under in-band underlay. So they just use resource allocation techniques and then use underlay methods. There's another one called outbound actually, or outband. Yeah. So this is the unlicensed spectrum. The cellular network providers, the Jio, Airtel, all of them, they don't have any licenses for this frequency range. And this range is all free for use. It's mostly used for scientific and medical networks. So they're multi-purpose use. So over here, there's no security. You can't have any control over them. But still, it's a free spectrum. You can just use it for D2D. There'll be no interference. So, but it's not preferred as such. And there's also not a lot of research work going on in outband D2D. So 5G device here. So in 5G, when you compare, somebody saying anything? Okay. So when you combine D2D with 5G, there are 4 types of connections you can think of. First one is device relying with control link establishment from the operator. So basically, this is the case that I told you about before. The source image you can see over here in the mobile phone, it wants to send data to the base station, but then it doesn't have any good signal from that area. So it's going to relay its data, and then from the relay device, it's going to go to the base station. So this is going to enhance the battery life of devices because it's not going to send all the way for the long distance to the base station. It's just going to relay it to closer distance. That's it. So the next one we have is direct communication between devices with control link establishment by the operator. So over here, what they do is that the base station, it will just send a sort of a control signal to both the devices, the source and the destination. And once the control is accepted, that's it. They don't have to talk to them, talk to the base station. They can just communicate between each other, the source and destination, just like normal D2D. So over here, interference management is possible because the base station, will select the appropriate devices based on the calculation for interference. So the third one would be device relaying with control link establishment from the device itself. Right? They communicate with relays, and the base station doesn't have any say at all. So the control signals are sent first. The source will send a control signal to the destination, and suppose they're too far away, then they can use a relay as well. So the relay from the relay it will go to the destination again. And the final type of communication is that direct communication between devices without any control link establishment. So over here, what they do is it's just sorry. So over here, it's just two devices talking to each other. That's it. There's no other relay and stuff involved. So call setup management, everything is managed by the devices themselves. So what next after 5G? That is all the concepts that it's probable to appear in the future. But what next after 5G? I mean, right now there is no such thing as 6G, but if it does come out, it's believed that it will have speeds of 1 terabyte per second and also use the terahertz waves. Okay? So ultimately, this technology is going to be great help in every industry, and it's going to have a huge impact on society. Okay? So we come to the end of the session over here. If you guys have any doubts at all, you can unmute yourself or even put it in the chat box. There was one person who asked about Starlink, right? Chicker. Yeah. So Starlink is competing with that's what. Starlink just because it uses satellite connections doesn't mean it's gonna solve the interference problems. It's always gonna be there. You can't just direct the connection towards each and every house. And the interference are not just the trees and stuff. The atmospheric gases they also absorb the signals. So that's also an interference. So all of that is to be considered. But as of now, 5G is more preferred. So the thing with Starlink is that they're useful if it's an application of giving connection to remote areas. But 5G is not good for remote areas, but they're good for the residential areas and the companies that are inside the city and stuff. In that cases, it's quite useful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other doubts, guys? Yeah, Rahul. The concept of small cells is actually meant for the dense metro cities. That's the only place you need it. So because there's going to be a lot of interference, right? There's going to be a lot of buildings. So maybe in each street or maybe in each once in 200 300 meters, you're going to implement a small cell. Okay, guys. Manika, I'm handing it over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mother, for taking time out and cheering this webinar. I also thanks all the participants for joining this event. So the QR form of the feedback form is displayed on the screen as well as the link is shared in chat box. So do check it, and I request all the participants to fill the form, and we hope to see you soon further. Thank you. Have a nice day.